Hey guys, welcome to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. My name is Sarah. I'm married to Mark and we have 8 kids at home. If you haven't been here, our oldest is 30. We started homeschooling when he was 7. So it's been quite a long journey. Our youngest at home is 2, so I still have a ways to go. And I've been doing this series about homeschooling. And today's just another part of that. So today's video, I was going to try to make yesterday, and we've had a bunch of Josiah had some seizures yesterday, which has made things a little difficult. But I wanted to talk today about why are we homeschooling. So I've got a little helper with me. This video, the end part of it is going to be about Christian parenting, but even if you're not a Christian, the first part of this video is necessary for everybody. Homeschooling is hard. Hard does not mean bad. If you would like to go run a marathon, there are going to be days that are really hard. There are going to be days where you wake up in the morning and you're laying in bed and you're like, I don't want to train today. But you know the end result is going to be able to run the marathon. And so you're going to not think about the hardship of today. You're going to think about the end result. And that is very important in homeschooling, that you look at the end result. What am I hoping to accomplish with my child in the end? I'm going to make another video that is going to address how you break down what you're looking for as an end result into like a daily result of like what you're going to work towards. But everybody needs to know what the end goal is so that let's say with the marathon, my end goal is to run a marathon. That means in my training, I'm going to work up. And I know on this day, I'm going to be working on this thing. And again, I'll break this down. This doesn't mean that you need to know what your kid is doing for high school math when they go into kindergarten. Yep, you can sit. But you do need to know. You can wave at the camera, and then you can go play. You don't need to know what's going to happen for high school math class. You need to know what you're looking for as an end result for your child. So this is important for both parents to sit down and talk about together. Because when those hard days come, you need to remember, why am I homeschooling? What is the why behind what we're doing? Because the why behind what you're doing is probably not to make sure your 5th grader memorized their times tables. I'm not saying that can't be a goal that we're working towards in this, but that's not the end result. So for my husband and I, we sat down years ago and kind of decided, what do we want to see in our child when they graduate? Like, what do we want them to look like as a young adult? Then every year, sometimes every couple months, we just go over those things. And is this still what we're striving for? For us, this hasn't changed. The overall philosophy has not changed, but we have many individual children. And so what we're looking for each of them is going to change. Because if we have a child who's very motivated to become a doctor, it's going to look different than if we have a child, I'm helping unbutton a shirt, than if we have a child who's very motivated to become a car mechanic. Their schooling is going to look different. Their daily habits and patterns are going to look different, and that's okay. But our end result is still going to be the same. So this is where it might get into, like I'm going to be talking about our end result is because we are Christians, but this kind of applies to everybody. Our first result for when we have our kids graduate is we want our kids to know about the God who created them. So I cannot make my child a Christian. God is the one who opens somebody's eyes to understand who he is. That is not my work. My work is to point them to the one true God. So at the end of schooling, I want them to have a good understanding of what the Bible teaches about God. I can't have the goal that I want my child to be a Christian by the time they finish schooling, because that's not my job. My job is to point them there. So that is the first thing, that we have children that understand God. The next one, like understand him in we have read the Bible. They understand what God's word says about abortion. They understand what God's word says about marriage. They understand what God's word says about child rearing. But they might not have made those their own thoughts, just that they've been taught those things. The next thing is we want to make children who are going to be adults, who are productive members of society. Now that might look different for different children. I know we all have this view of what we think public schools give a diploma for, but they have different standards also. So like when Mark was going to high school, he was like on a business track. So he did like a bookkeeping class where other kids were on a college bound track. And so they had to take certain classes that lined up with college prerequisites. Also, I have a child, Josiah, who is not going to be able to work in society the way others do. Josiah has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. I want him to work to the best of his ability, but he is not going to be a doctor. He's not going to be a lawmaker, and that's okay. But my goal for him is for him to be a productive member of society, so he can understand history and why it's important that our founding fathers were Christians and where our country should be headed, because we call ourselves a Christian nation. And like the whole process of being able to vote and being able to like submit a bill and all of that stuff. I want him to have a basic understanding of that. Is he going to understand that to the same way that my 19-year-old does that is actually writing a bill? No. But my 11-year-old daughter isn't planning to write any bills right now, and so she doesn't understand it either. And I don't understand the bill writing process in the same way my 19-year-old does, because she studied it. So it doesn't mean that each child is going to have exactly the same education, but I want each child to be a productive member of society. They need to know how to have a good work ethic. They need to know how to interact with other human beings on the level that they'll need to interact. So a child who is not like who someone would call an introvert, who isn't a very big people person, still needs to know how to make a phone call. They still need to know how to get groceries from a store, because those are something they're going to have to do in their life. So for us, Bible is the number one priority. Our second is life skills, in the idea that every person who leaves our house is going to need to know how to have clean clothes, how to take care of their bodies, washing, going to the doctor, those types of things, how to purchase groceries, how to make phone calls, how to interact with the world around them, how to be a good, upstanding member of society who keeps the law, who votes. I know people have issues with voting or not voting, but like does the things that are required to do through the government, or the blessings that we get to do. If you are a person who wants your child to know how to vote, you're going to have to teach them that process. That's what I'm saying. The things that are important to your family, that's the second thing I want, is life skills so that my child can be part of society. I also want them, this is kind of like a number, I have like 1, 2A, 2B, and then 3. So the second one, part B, is I want them to be beneficial members to the family. I want to develop family relationships that are going to go past the time of them living within our house and having to deal with their siblings, but making family relationships where they want to deal with their siblings. They want to hang out with them on a weekend. They want to call Mark and I after they've moved out of the house. So sibling relationships are super important to me. And then number 3, I want my children to succeed academically in the level that they're going to be at. So again, I explained we have a son who is probably not going to be able to hold down a very intellectually heady job, if that makes sense. But Josiah could, we have this thing because of Josiah's seizures and stuff. Physically, I don't know if he'd be able to hold down a job, but mentally, I want him to be able to be a cashier at the store or be able to be a customer service person, like that type of thing. I think Josiah could succeed in a job that he has very specific idea of what he's doing. But that's going to look different from Samuel, who right now is very interested in 911 dispatching. And there's a lot of different things where your day looks different every day and you don't have a very strict guideline. Josiah is the type of kid who needs a job where they say, first you're going to do this thing, then you're going to do this thing, then you're going to do this thing. And each one is different, and that's okay. But part of my schooling them is to teach them the skills they need to succeed in whatever way they can succeed. For some kids, that looks like a child who is on a college-bound path, who is able to learn lots of different things in lots of different ways, like book learning, and is going to succeed really well in college. But if you have a child that isn't going to do that, forcing them to be a good book learner and be able to maintain a college regime is not going to be helpful for them, because there are kids who are very, very good with their hands, and they are going to be a great plumber. They're going to be a great, we need garbage men in this world. We need people who are managers of the place where you change your oil. We need people who do that, but it doesn't necessarily need a college degree. And so you're going to have students who think that they are not good learners because they don't learn like everybody else learns. Does that make sense? I want my kids to know that they can succeed, and I want to give them all the tools they personally need to succeed. So, doing this philosophy, sitting down with your spouse to talk about what do we want to see as an end result, really helps you to decide what curriculum you want to choose, how structured you want your day to look. If your end result for your children is, I want them to be able to get into Princeton, then your days are going to look different, because I do not require that my kids finish trigonometry by the end of high school. It is not part of our rules for the state of Maine, like the laws that I have to follow. They do not have to do trigonometry. They need to do math, and we do math. If I had a child who wanted to do trigonometry, we would totally find a resource to teach them trigonometry, because I don't know it. But not all of my kids, like none of my kids so far who have gotten to the high school level are interested in that level of math. So we don't do it. But if your family, if your philosophy is we want them to have the best education possible to get into this specific school, you're going to need to do the prerequisites for that. So that helps you plan out what you're doing for 8th grade math, because if they need to get to trigonometry, they're going to have to start algebra sooner than another student. But as Christians, our number one goal, described in the Bible, is that we need to be teaching our children about God. We were just reading Psalm 145 yesterday. And it was talking about teaching these things to the next generation. It talks about it in different parts of the Bible. Deuteronomy talks about it too. But we need to be passing this information on to our children. And it is the most important thing as Christians that we can teach our kids. And so, I'm going to sneeze. Teaching our kids as Christians any subject is to point them back to the Creator. Science is about how God made our world, how God has made things to work. And I was looking for a kid. Josiah. I need someone to do something for me behind the camera. It's teaching our children how the world works because God made it, how the laws of gravity are made by God so that we stay stuck to this planet. It's more than that, but I'm thinking in like a little kid level. Can you take the box out of their cage? It fell in and they can't get it out. We have the guinea pigs out here. So we teach math because God is a God of order, and God made all of the math around us that helps us to determine how big the world is, to determine how fast we can go in vehicles, and how we can make things faster because we know it can just go on the ground. No, Josiah, just out of their cage. They have enough shade. How aerodynamics work so that we can make the plane go faster, how we can make a car more fuel efficient. All of these things are like science and math that God has shown us how to do, but all of them are because God put laws of nature in place that show us how the world works. Teaching our kids language skills, reading, all of those, are because we want our children to be able to read the Bible and read about the God who made them, and then to be able to tell others about it. So being able to have a good way of speaking to people that other people can understand what they're saying. Maybe writing is the thing so that they can tell people about the God they serve. We don't teach our children writing for the end result to be, I want to tell you a silly story about a dog who jumped in a mud puddle. That might be part of the process of getting them to the writing where they're able to share their faith, but that's what we're ultimately trying to do, is trying to make children who know who God is, that they can glorify him. Again, not your responsibility to make them a Christian, just your responsibility to teach them. I see. What do you got? Uh-huh.
Cut this big.
Ooh, he cut a big chunk off, hitting something with a piece of wood.
Or log.
With a log. Thank you. Teaching them, like, all the things that we teach them. Teaching them phys ed is so we can teach them how to take care of the bodies God has given them, because we are a temple to the Lord and we want to use our bodies in a way that, like, as a 43-year-old woman, I want to keep my body healthy enough that I can continue to do God's work if he calls me onto the mission field at 65. So I want to keep myself healthy. All the things, all the subjects that we're teaching are so that our children can grow closer to God and be used in his service as Christians. And so your philosophy on teaching them that is going to help you determine which kind of curriculum you use, what you spend your majority of your time on, and I'll break that down in another video. But if you have comments on this, please write them below. I know this video is not for everybody, because I know not everyone who watches my channel is a Christian, but I wanted to explain why we do what we do and what the Bible has to say about that. So we will see you guys next time on Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God.